Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast, where we discuss and debate the latest news regarding course cutters, bandits, and bib mules.
Hello, welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. This is Derek Murphy with co-host Scott Coomer. Scott, say hi.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
All right. Tonight we are joined by Frankie Ruiz. I'm very excited about this one. Frankie is the co-founder of the Miami Marathon, and he was one of the first race directors to reach out to me after I wrote a brief article about the Miami Marathon. I think it was a general article about a few runners that I caught. He reached out to me. My first inclination was, okay, he's not going to be happy. But when I talked to him, he was nice as can be. He said he appreciated the work we were doing. So when I started the podcast, one of the first people I wanted to get on was Frankie Ruiz, and first thank him for everything he's doing, and have a discussion with him about everything he's doing for the community, and of course cheating and bandits. Frankie, welcome.
Thank you, Derek, and hi, Scott. I appreciate you guys having me and inviting me.
Again, you've Miami Marathon. You've co-founded that. What year is it in, and how can people register?
Well, I'll go into that in a second. I did want to make sure I thanked you for the work one more time that you do. I think it's underappreciated by those a lot of those runners that don't know how big of an issue it is that you're out constantly fighting. So thank you for doing what you do, and I'm humbly proud to say that I'm on your team. Again, I'm sure there's a few race directors that might say differently, but I think the majority of us appreciate what you do. So thank you on behalf of the runners.
Thanks very much. And it's really kind of turned from when I was the crazy guy with the blog who would email about results that when there was no knowledge to what it is now. I get a lot quicker, more positive reactions and feedback, from races. So sometimes, email stuff gets lost, when runners report a result or stuff gets slipped through. But again, I think, it's been, the response from race directors as a whole has been great. And so I've kind of gone from being, bashing the race director to kind of appreciating what they're dealing with and, kind of, working, more on their side. Just, I think everyone wants to get everything right. Sometimes it's more difficult than others.
Sure. So. No, but yeah, you asked me about the Miami Marathon. It's coming up. So January 27th of 2019, we'll have our 17th edition. It's a pretty big deal around here. It's the only marathon in Miami, and we have a half attached to it. It's actually the half that's a little bit more popular than the full, but nonetheless, we know the event by its marathon name. So it is the Fitbit Miami Marathon and Half Marathon, and we get about 23,000 folks, and registration is still open. So themiamimarathon.com is where you can register.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, I'm going to get right into it. One of the things that you're known for, may not be what you want to be known for, but is kind of you've been forward thinking on and regarding bandits with your race. You've been very aggressive in capturing the bandits. If you can, let us know a little bit about what you're doing.
Well, I, along with a couple partners, started the Miami Marathon 17 years ago. And back then, I can't say that we had a complete handle on what was going on in the business or the industry. And as a race director, when you are pinching pennies and you're trying to make things work, you start to pay attention to something like not paying for your race. And still coming out and doing it. I think back to my first 5K race as an event producer, and a very famous runner. I won't say his name because I respect his privacy. A famous runner didn't run our race. Actually, he just came and started eating our food at the finish line. And I approached him, and that's when I first realized that this was a little bit of an issue, where there was in the running community this perception that, hey, you know what, a race ends at a park, and you're giving out bagels and bananas, and people can just take it and run the race if they want, and take from your water and Gatorade, and I started to be a little bit more interested in that. And fast forward to the videos that were posted a couple years ago, or actually last year, it's still an issue. It's still an issue out there. So we've done a few things to stop this. We've got a whole bandit team lined up along the course at different points. At the start line, we're a little bit more strict. The finish line leading up to, we've got even some police officers that have joined us in this effort. Can't say it's rampant. There's not hundreds and thousands of people doing it, but to those 200 or so people we caught last year, I think that's enough. To me, if it's just one person, it's still too many. But hopefully we're doing enough to curb it a bit.
Yeah, there was recently Runner's World did an article that said, titled "Do not ever bandit." But if you do, here's not to be how to. Let me redo that. Do not bandit ever, or at least don't be an a-hole. And the article, the heading was, it even said the full word there, which is another issue. And then it says you shouldn't bandit, but hey, if you're going to do it anyway, we have some thoughts. And then they kind of do almost a how-to on if you bandit or not. What are your thoughts on that? Is there different levels? Is it sometimes okay to bandit, or is it?
Well, let me start off by addressing the Runner's World article. I've been reading Runner's World my whole life, and I love the publication, and I know it's gone through different iterations and changes and whatnot. And I still believe in it, but I was disappointed in that headline. I coach high school kids, and I don't appreciate just the celebration of the word of vulgar language like what they use to headline an article. But specifically, the other thing I'll mention about related to that article is that this is like the leading aviation magazine publishing a story on how to be a nice terrorist. And I know some people probably, Frankie, why you be so dramatic and saying? I'm like, well, I'm just trying to illustrate a point here. Here's the one publication that exists that promotes our races and our events and does a pretty darn good job of capturing the popular side of running and even some of the technical stuff and the high school stuff. And here you are, you're going to tell people it's okay to cheat. Just be nice about it. I had a problem with that. I had a big problem with that. So anyhow, moving on. You got me a little fired up with that one.
No, I wanted to make sure we mentioned that, and you're not alone. And the funny thing was, I've had a back and forth with, the current chief running officer on Twitter on that. And again, he's really still seemed to be downplaying it and say, well, hey, there's a lot of bigger problems. Why are people worried about this? Well, within your runner's world, so, within that scope of things, yeah, this is a big deal. And race directors, I don't think I heard from anybody that was okay with that article, and yet they kept defending it. Bart Yasso came out and was completely against it, and came out pretty strongly. And we're going to actually have him on the show soon as well. So I'm sure we'll talk about that article. I've invited Jeff.
I love Bart.
I can't wait to talk to him. We may have Jeff on there. He seemed open to appearing, but we haven't scheduled him. So I'd love to have a debate with him on the topic as well. So what you mentioned, you mentioned about videoing the runners. The one thing you do, and I think it definitely does kind of serve as a deterrent when people see these kind of thing. Very similar to my site is, you had a videotape pulling runners off the course right in the finish corral. So pulling runners off, pulling bandits off, anybody without a bib. And I think kind of the way you did it, hey, show your bib. You're not going to get a photo without your bib. And then people without bibs, you'd pull them off. And what kind of excuses? What's the reaction when you pull somebody off the course typically?
So I decided to do that myself. I wanted to be present during this, because I think that all too often the race director is kind of not too present in some of the races. They're behind the scenes. They're doing other things. So I said, I'm going to be part of this. I get it. There's other important parts of the race, but at the same time, I'm cheering on the runners as they're coming through. And I go, you know what? I'm going to film this a little bit. So I did it with my own phone for a little while. And the thing that I was most captivated by was, one, the excuses. Oh, I forgot to put on my bib. That's kind of like saying you forgot to, put on your shorts for a race. I mean, it's the kind of thing you don't typically forget and remember right before you cross the line. And not to mention, the race here isn't that cold, so it's not like it's under 4 layers of clothing. So you can't even give me that excuse. But I was surprised the amount of people that were just like, yeah, you're right, I'll step off. Very few people got aggressive or upset with me. They were more embarrassed. than not. And I think the camera just added to it, much like what you're doing. I mean, you kind of have to highlight this for a few reasons. You have to tell the person that's doing it. You have to sort of lightly shame the person that's doing it. And I say lightly because I still believe people are entitled to mistakes and bad judgment. And secondly, you have to show your paying customers that there's a reason why they're paying. You know, that you know, they're still to pay next year. You know, and not have run next to somebody that just because that's the one excuse they give you. Come on, I've already run 13 miles, because I'll stand 200 meters before the finish line. I've already run 13 miles. You're not going to let me cross? And I say no, because you might get in the way of somebody's photo that paid. You might still grab a medal from a volunteer that doesn't know, you know, that doesn't want to argue with you. And you might still get my bananas and bagels and food. This year we had almost a whole meal at the finish line. That's not right, you know. So anyhow, that's and I get it. Everybody wants their full segment on Strava and their full. I'm like, listen, go finish the 13.1 miles at the next road over. You're just not going to cross our finish line. This is a finish line for those that registered. So
let me ask you this: what's the argument if I live in the city there? You know, I'm a taxpayer. It's a road. It's open to the public, and I don't want your banana. I don't want your medal. I just want to go run on the road with the people. You know, why can't I go do that?
So, that's you know, a fair argument, and it's understandable that people bring that argument to light. But look, my family's likes to get together at a local park. We're getting together the first week of January. Traditionally, we'll play a kickball game and whatnot. And we rent a softball field to use as a kickball field. And we also rent a shelter at the park, a public park. And I rent this shelter, and I'm not going to let somebody else come in and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to set up my kid's birthday party inside your shelter. I'm going to say, listen, I'm sorry, we rented this shelter and the park will stand by us. So much like you rent a public shelter or an element of a public park, I think you also rent or pay a fee or a permit or go by whatever policies the city has to rent the street for an event that others have paid for, much like a concert that may be more relatable to people. A concert at a public park. You know, our park down here is Bayfront Park, and that park gets closed off, and people pay good money to go to an event there, a concert there, and there's fencing and ticket takers. This is the same thing, except it's kind of a little bit more open. I don't put a 6-foot fence around the entire race course, but technically we're entitled to being on that road that day.
Does that argument change at all, or is it a little bit less compelling if it's an open course? Like, for example, in Chicago, we've had a lot of 5Ks and 10Ks that are on the lakefront path, and, you know, it's kind of put in the race literature. This is an open course. There's going to be other people out there. Watch out for, you know, other runners and bicyclists. You know, in that case, you didn't pay. You might have paid a permit, but you didn't pay for exclusive use of the course.
Yeah, if the city tells you, hey, you know, you don't have the right to kick the person off that's walking their dog or the mom pushing their stroller, then you do have to abide by those guidelines. And I deal with it here in Miami Beach. I use the hard packed sand, and we use the boardwalk. We use the beach walk for some of our events. And I tell my triathletes or my 5K runners or whatever event we're doing that, hey, you might have to dodge some pedestrians and some folks that are not part of the race. Now, the area where I have the finish line, that area is it's usually in a somewhat public area, but that I can tell you, hey, you got to go around. And we usually have a sort of a detour for pedestrian traffic. But that's a good point. But that's less the case than not. So. And
then also kind of on the spectrum of banditing, you know, you see a lot of people, they'll have their friend will hop in and pace them either first part of a race, or they hop in and, you know, pace them the last, you know, at mile 20. What is that okay?
I mean,
I know the answer, but
we just had the turkey trot down here in a tropical park, and this turkey trot had I have the lead female of the 10K because we have a 5K and a 10K. So I have to kind of meander my way back into the crowd and look for my 10K leader. And this female leader, I tend to escort with my bike. And as I'm doing that, I see that there's 2 or 3 men, or actually there's 3 men around her. So I look at each one and I'm just like, maybe I'll recognize one of them and tell him, hey, don't get in the way of her breaking the tape. Don't take her moment. So I'm looking at, and I do recognize one of the guys. And as I look a little closer, I see that he's running next to somebody that doesn't have a bib. So I go, hey, where's your bib, man? And he's like, oh, no. Frankie, he's pacing me. So the guy knew me, which was even more upsetting. But he said, no, he's pacing me, but he's going to get off. He's going to get off soon. I said, get off, because not only are you illegally pacing him, in a sense, like you didn't register for the race, but the guy didn't pay for the race. So get off both. No, I don't think that that's okay to jump in and help your friend. Some people do it. I get it. There's a person who does it because, I don't know, their friend or family member just survived cancer and they want to run in the last mile. I think that is less the case than not, even though that person, I do kindly ask them to get off. And they're generally pretty understanding. But no, you shouldn't have somebody pacing you the last part of the race that didn't register for the race. If he's such a good friend or a good family member or brother, he'll register for the whole race and train to pace you the whole way, not just the last 2 miles.
Yeah, and not the, again, the point is, pacing is not legal. If somebody's, trying to qualify for doing an Olympic qualifier and has a pacer or wins a race and has a pacer, they'll be disqualified. They can be. That happened at a race very recently where the leader was witnessed having a pacer the entire race. They got disqualified. So it's, if you're competing for anything and have a non-registered runner with you, it's, that's against the rules. And
right.
There was an issue with the Flying Pig Marathon 2 years ago. The female winner was a high school coach, may have been a cross-country coach or a track coach, and running with her the entire race were members of her team, but they were running the relay. So a different member would run a segment with her each time. And so in my mind, okay, they're registered runners. They're running their own race. I think that's fine. Then at the end, all the runners, ran into the finish with her because they got bussed up ahead or whatnot. And so people took issue with that, and I got reports on that and whatnot. So the race was aware, and they made the decision to keep her as the winner. But she was definitely running a risk of being disqualified based on that. So not only with being wrong, it's from the Bandit side, just having a pacer is not can get you disqualified, and it has.
Correct.
And then another issue that I've noticed many times, especially seems more recently, or maybe I'm looking for it more, is bib swapping, where you have somebody can't run the race, whatever, and they give their bib to a younger family member and whatnot, and then you'll see this younger member qualifying, either qualifying for Boston with that bib or winning an age group award. Do you see a lot of that?
Yeah, that's again one of those items that the average runner doesn't quite understand. I mean, maybe some of the veterans realize it because they're looking at the results a little bit more closely week after week, and some of their local neighborhood 5Ks, and they know who's who. But every so often, I mean, Miami does get a lot of transient folks, so you might see a name you don't recognize here and there, but sometimes there's times that just completely skew the gender or the age, and you can't help but realize that this is being done because somebody swapped bibs, different age group, different gender. It just happens a lot, and I know it because I have a warehouse filled with age group award medals. So oftentimes a person just feels too embarrassed to come up to the podium or to request their medal. So we've done certain things along the way, and my staff hears it often where I just say, guys, keep putting layers, of sort of prevention or layers of obstacle for some of these things to happen, to prevent some of these things from happening. So one such example is color coding the bibs. So lightly, very, very subtle too, because I do want it to catch some people by surprise, but where the bib will have a light tint of pink or of some other color. I don't want to be too gender specific on it. But the few races where we tried that, it's been good, because now someone's thought twice, like, oh, wait a minute, I'm giving this to my husband. I better not. And the other thing that we've done is really taken that old industry standard and tossed it out the window, which was no refunds and no transfers. We now allow refunds, and we allow deferments. Sorry, no, we don't allow refunds. We allow transfers. Sorry. We allow transfers, and we allow deferments.
No refunds.
Right. The refund still, that policy still sticks, but we kind of have caught up with the times and been able to figure out how to do this in a fairly efficient manner, but there's still a slight fee for it. But we do allow it.
I think that, like, that's one of the things that I would applaud our race director for doing, and I wish I would see more of it, because, I mean, you think about it. For example, I'm signed up for the Chicago Marathon. That's, a year in advance, and it costs $200. And how do I know that I'm not going to get injured or some life change is going to happen? And, if you're going to have a strict policy about not, letting me swap or exchange my bib or something like that, you should have a deferral program or something, because, I mean, I have no choice. I have to buy something a year in advance that I might not be able to use.
I like to think of my race much like an NBA or an NFL game, where you're selling a seat with a number, and that seat can't be taken by anybody else unless it's the person with that ticket and that seat number. So I have to be flexible as an event director to say, hey, you know what, guys? I want everybody to show up to the game. I want everybody to show up to the race. I don't want to play games and have you guys in the black market, selling bibs on Craigslist, because it hurts the integrity of the event. It hurts the integrity of the results. And so we made that change, and I think it's been a fairly positive change. I'd like to say it's reduced the number of I guess skewed age group results. If I had an exact number, I would be able to tell you this is how much has been reduced by. But I'd say in the last 4 years, just judging by the amount of people that take advantage of the transfer policy, it has been pretty darn good for the curbing of that, running with somebody or bib swapping.
No, I think that's good. And whenever I write about, and I write about a lot about the banditing and about the, people, that's one of the first things they say, well, if they offered a transfer policy or a deferral, and a lot of times, I find it happy with Marine Corps, and they do, the Marine Corps Marathon, they have a transfer policy, and you still have people, giving bibs away and whatnot, so it doesn't completely do away with it, but it kind of takes away the excuse. And for the legitimate runner who really injures themselves and wants to run it the following year, I think the deferment, to me, if races just offer the deferment, I think that would be sufficient. And obviously, like transfer, you can't do a transfer policy for Boston because of the qualifying standards. Now, could they implement some sort of wait list? Someone drops off, next person in line gets the spot? They probably could. I'm not sure. I'm not sure all the logistics of that and how difficult that may be. But I also applaud you for that. But again, if a race doesn't have a transfer policy, then you agree to the rules when you sign up for it. So,
yeah.
And moving away from the bandits and the transfers, let's talk a little bit about course cutting. Tell me, how much do you see that? How much do you think you're catching? Any crazy stories relating to course cutting?
There's been a few throughout the years. I think you know of one of them in particular. The neat thing about our course, at least the Miami Marathon course, is that it goes over two bridges over Biscayne Bay. So if you're going to cut, you're only going to be able to cut a little bit. So it's unless you're going to swim across, you're almost forced. If you've gotten onto the Miami Beach side, you're almost forced to have to get back at some point. But we've laid out the extra mats and we've done all that good stuff. But every so often you get somebody that says, well, your timing equipment doesn't work. And yet you're like, yeah, but it worked for the other 99.99% of the people that ran the race. And this one lady, I think you
Yes.
dealt with, she had the excuse of having wrapped her EpiPen around with foil because she says she's allergic to bees. And then this pen or the foil was messing with the RFID, which is not entirely wrong. That is one of the things that could interfere with the signal. But then when you did your homework on it, and we did some homework on it, we realized there's just no way. Her prior results, indicate that there's no way she should be running the times that she's running. So
yeah, with her, it was interesting, and not only that, she would say that there were a lot of with Miami. There were a lot of trash cans by the timing mats, and so she'd kind of go around those. So it was crazy. But yeah, with her, all of her, she had a couple of Boston qualifying times, or probably more than two. But all of her Boston qualifying times, she was missing mats, and any race where she would hit all the timing mats was 5.5, 6.5 hours. So the pattern was pretty clear and pretty obvious. But yeah, she came out with the excuses that'd be in the top 10 for sure. There were other ones. I had a woman who had a pacemaker. She says she has a pacemaker, and she was told to avoid timing mats. So it was, yeah. So I get it all. So yeah, so that definitely was an interesting one, and yeah, one I spent a lot of time on going back and forth, with her, and yeah, I heard from her. I heard from some of her friends, and who she accused of ratting. She accused her friends of ratting her out, and yeah, I heard from them, and yeah, so that was one of the more interesting, crazy cases. She did have a Boston qualifying time for 2018, but I believe it was from Disney. It was from Disney, and she wasn't in the results initially, but she was added to the results and had hit 0 of the intermediate timing mats. So I don't know how that happened. Never got an answer, but thankfully, I because she knew I was watching, she didn't register for Boston that year. So she did qualify, but didn't register.
Yeah, and you know what? The one thing we do is we do give the benefit of the doubt as often as we can. I've been corrected. I've had a runner prove me otherwise. I tell the story often of one of our local female standouts where she made the Miami Marathon her first marathon. And so then I started getting messages from people like, we don't know who she is. Well, sometimes you don't necessarily have to do 50 races before you go out and run a good race. And she was new to the scene. She had just been working with a coach on the side, and she's since shown, she's real fast. And I've had the pleasure of actually that was one of the people I led in at our turkey trot, where I saw her, booking those last couple miles in the 10K. So I know she's real, but that was one of those where we almost jumped the gun and said, well, wait a minute, who is she? Where does she come from? Let's look into this. And sure enough, we not only gave her the benefit of the doubt, but she stayed in our results, obviously. So, but yeah.
Yeah, very good. One thing you mentioned, I want to come back to with the color coding of the bibs and whatnot, and as far as with transgender runners, I wrote an article about Boston qualifier. It was a transgender runner. It was a male who was transitioning to a female, but hadn't done any hormones or whatnot, but ran a qualifying time, registered as a female, and used that time to enter Boston. The time would not have qualified her as a male. So it was definitely a very touchy subject to write on, to address. Have you run across a situation, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's 2018 and some of these issues are still being sorted out. And as a race director, I'm sure we're going to be dealing with all sorts of things in the future. So you can only be flexible and evolve with whatever issues that might arise that can make things better for the participants. So for now, we follow International Olympic Committee and USATF rules for our sanctioned events, which are pretty much all of them, which currently only allow for two gender categories. And the gender is whatever you presented on your state ID or passport. And that is what we assign to you with your packet. But we do understand that there's some that identify with a gender category that's completely different than what they're assigned at birth. And I'll let the general public know that we're constantly evolving our policies and adding additional gender options, considering adding additional gender options for future events. We have had a few cases where the person just didn't want to be in the results altogether, just wanted her official results or his official results. And we made some special provisions in one of our half marathons. Yeah, that's an ongoing conversation that I think race directors are going to be facing more of that. But that's currently our written policy.
Yeah. Have you experienced any backlash with participants that maybe came like second in their age group or anything like that to someone that they contended was, misgendered in terms of their entrance? Or, I mean, it's got to put a race director in a really weird position.
Not yet. Not yet. That's all I can say. I'm sure at some point we will, we'll have to deal with that one. But no, not yet.
I mean, I don't know what the rules are state by state in terms of getting a state ID, but there have to be some states that are extremely liberal with respect to that if you just go in and say, put female, they put female.
Yeah. I can't say that I'm up to speed on all the different cases or even ID identifications out there, but lucky enough, I work for Lifetime, and they're made up of a lot of much smarter people than myself, and I'm hoping, as these issues continue to face us at the event world, that at the club level, which is some of the things we operate as a Lifetime, they will also help out in figuring that out.
Yeah, when I wrote the article about the Boston runner, again, it was a non-transitioned runner who qualified as a female, and people were, again, with Boston, they won't, they'll take you at your word, and then so it's so that of course people say, well, hey, she's taking a spot from from somebody deserving, and so so you had all ends of that, and I was just trying to kind of put out there really what's interesting to me, and one of the things I was concerned about. Okay, you're going to have this runner going, registered as a female. People are going to question that, so I kind of wanted to get out in front of it, and I think I kind of pushed the BAA to make the official announcement kind of on their unofficial policy. So I think it was successful in that aspect. But it's very interesting, and I know it's not easy answers to that. And
I mean it's an issue that no one's going to be happy with under any circumstance, because on the one hand, there's this idea that, whatever's in someone's heart, you can't deny that. And if someone feels that they're a woman, they should be, and at the same time, then on the other end of the spectrum, we have two categories. How do we determine whether you're in them? And I think that there's no way to do it without somebody being upset.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on now. I know, Frankie, you're very involved in the community. You coach, I believe, cross country, girls or boys, both?
Just boys.
Okay, coaching boys, and
that was an interesting segue. But yes, just boys.
It wasn't completely unintentional, but no, very successfully. I believe you said previously that you 9 state championships. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I coach at Belen Jesuit High School in Miami, and I've had the good fortune of being involved with the program that's been around actually for 46 years. 49 years. Next year will be our 50th year, and the program has 10 state titles, and I've got 9 of those as a coach. And we're looking forward to actually breaking a record. Apparently, there's a state all boys or boys record for the most state championships, and we're tied with that now. So hopefully, in the next few years, we'll break that. But yeah, that's, believe it or not, running. Coaching rather is what I find most enjoyable. I love race directing, but my real passion is coaching at the high school level.
Okay, and I'm sure none of your athletes are have cut a course or anything to that effect. You won't put up with it.
I coach some pretty smart kids that I'm sure they they can figure something out. But I'd like to think that none of my teams have had to resort to any of that, but it's certainly something that somebody's pulled off, not to my knowledge, but as coaches, we tend to know who we're racing and what kids are what, and but has it been done? I'm sure it has. Will it be done again? I'm sure it will, but hopefully we can maintain the integrity of cross country, which is at times it's multiple loops. It's got all sorts of opportunities, if you will, for somebody to think about a way to cheat. But for now, hopefully it doesn't happen.
Yeah, as we're talking, I'm registering the domain name crosscountryinvestigation.com, so we'll look for that.
Oh God! And one thing that you can investigate is the amount of coaches that don't measure their courses correctly. That's one of my pet peeves, which is
I believe that. You have
that's another issue.
That happens in marathons. And usually they're measured correctly, but it's like a diversion, changing courses. Seems like this last year there were a lot of cases where a course was short and nobody got a Boston qualifying time, or they got diverted wrong by a volunteer. And that kills me because it's not the runner's fault. But if they ran less than 26.2, they can't use that to qualify for Boston. But that's another topic altogether. And
that happens. That happens. Yep. More often than not, yes.
Yeah, it ran across a number of those. Again, if it's long is one thing, you can run long, and but they're not going to prorate your time. But if you finish it, but if it's short and you didn't run 26.2 miles on the actual course, you won't get in. Boston won't accept it. You had this case where someone got diverted wrong, and then they tried running that extra time after, and the race tried to accept that, but they've made a firm stance on that. As far as community, also, tell me a little bit about what is plogging, and how'd you get started with that?
So, plogging is something. It's a Swedish term, I believe, that I had nothing to do with its origin outside of Miami, and it was the act of running while being on the lookout for garbage and litter and so forth, and picking it up along the way and carrying it to a dumpster or to a garbage bin. We decided in Miami that we were going to make use of the run clubs that I'm part organizer of, which is considered actually one of the largest run clubs in the country, and if not the world, that meets on a Tuesday. One of the sessions we have is we meet on a Tuesday night, and there could be 3, 4, 5, 6, even upwards of 700 people showing up for these runs. And I thought, all right, well, if we can get 600, 700 people, or even 200 people carrying a bag and picking up garbage around our city, we can pick up a lot. And we did. We've done it a couple times, and the amount of garbage we picked up is remarkable. This is a pretty sloppy city when it comes to some of our gutters and our swales and whatnot. And I take it personal. I don't like our city to look like that, and we've made it a little bit of a side mission of the run club. Not to get in the habit of always doing this, but making the runner a little bit more aware. And I've been told that I've ruined some people's runs because now they run thinking about it, and they look down and they feel guilty passing a piece of paper. But it has changed a little bit of the culture in the city. That the city officials are trying to beautify the city, adding more city workers and sanitation employees out there to pick up. So I think if anything, this whole year of us doing it has really pique the interest of our city folks. And look, we're a city that is on the edge of the ocean, obviously. And if we don't pick that stuff up, as small as some of it is, it usually just gets rained on, pushed into a gutter, and pushed out to the ocean, unfortunately. So we've got to do our part.
No, I think that's great. And again, anybody who wants to do it, just pick up take a bag with you, and and carry what you can. The key question with that though is, when you pick up trash, do you stop your Garmin?
That could be another podcast.
Yeah, when I'm really stretched for content, I'll do that. When you
if it's a race, then you got to pause it and then call me on Monday and tell me that you want your time adjusted. I've gotten that one every so often. My Garmin says this. I'm like, oh, that's not what we're going by.
Well, you get I think it was the Portland Marathon where the runners got stopped by the train, and and just had to wait. But then you had the people going through and cutting through the train and doing stupid stuff to try to get by it and to get past it. So and that's again, that stinks. Not the runner's fault, but you got to stop for the train. Getting to a different subject altogether. Well, that's all I have. If you want to give the information for the anyone who wants to register for the marathon, where do they go?
Yeah, so like I said, January 27th is our big dance, our big day for the Fitbit Miami Marathon presented by Lifetime. We've got still some time to get you in there. Our half and full marathons are still open. We just crossed the 16,000 runner mark. We expect in the next few weeks to get close to 23,000 registrants, which is pretty close to our cap. And we've got a 5K Saturday morning. It's worth mentioning that both the 5K and the marathon and a half are pretty fast courses. We don't have a lot of hills around Miami. If you're not familiar with this, we do consider ourselves a premier destination race. Most of our runners are coming from outside of Miami. We got close to 70% of the runners are outside of Miami-Dade County. We get a lot of Latin American runners, so you will find Spanish to be a dominant language. And we do get a lot of runners from the Northeast and parts of the Midwest, because it is a time of the year where I can almost guarantee you we're not going to have snow. Miami had snow one year in 1977 or 78, I believe, before my time, but not for a race. But it did snow here once. But I can almost bet my life that it won't snow on January 27th. So I invite the listeners to visit themiamimarathon.com and consider us as one of your events.
Okay, Frankie, thank you very much for all your time tonight. It's great having you, and good luck with the marathon and the half marathon and everything going on. And thanks for everything you do for the sport, for the community. That's wonderful. And again, we'll be talking to you soon. Again, hopefully, not in too much detail. but
if I get an email from Derek, you better believe I go straight into the issue. If it's on Facebook, whatever it is, I go straight into it because
I think I've called you and it's been I've called your office like, oh no, he's not available. I'm like, I said, well, this is Derek. Hang on one second. They put me right. I have got the red phone, for the marathon investigation.
Absolutely.
Do the runners know he's out there? Are they like watching out for him?
For Derek, now I'm going to make it a point to let more people know that Derek's on our team, and we're not officially associated, but I think it's something I'm gonna consider.
Absolutely.
But it's what he does for race directors. Some may get upset, but when he doesn't know what he's doing, or he knows what he's doing for the industry, but some of the race directors don't necessarily know how important his work has become.
Honolulu.
So it's an honor to talk to you, and it's hopefully we just can share some stories about other people's races and not just ours. But no, I will close out and say that my goal as a race organizer and sort of a member of the running community and a coach is to encourage people to train right to do these races, so they don't have to cut or give their number to somebody else, and hopefully to pay for the race, and get in the legal way into some of these events. I don't want to be known as the race director that got people out of the sport. I prefer to be known as a race director that built the community and brought more people in. Right. So my intention is to maintain that integrity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, the kind of reason I do the way I do it is it's not to be shaming the people or getting people out. It's to make sure the people who do the work get the proper recognition. And, part of that is the people who don't deserve the recognition, getting them out of the equation. So,
Derek, one thing I've noticed of you is that it's not about you. And I think that the same thing goes here with my job. It's not about, my reputation or my credibility. It's the greater picture, which is the reputation of the sport, the reputation of the industry, the reputation of the business in some cases, or the charities that are part of these events. And it's frankly to protect the runners. So I'm glad you've never made it about you or about your vendetta. Like, I had somebody ask me, like, did that guy get, did he get cheated by somebody? And I go, look, I really don't know the whole backstory, but I can assure you it's not about him.
No, I Forrest Gumped my way into it. It started with kind of an interest in the data. Say, well, how many people really cheat, and what does that? Then when I found the numbers and found 60 plus runners cheating that actually entered Boston, and then as I started getting all the tips, is when it started. Boy, this is really important to a lot of people, and it's important to me too. But I realized how big as it was. It kind of started as a curiosity and just kind of grew up to where it was to where I'm definitely it's about the runners, and I like much better to when I get somebody's result, someone reinstated, the runner who qualified for Boston but his bib didn't register at the start line. We were able to figure out what time he started, and he made that made up the time he needed to get into Boston. So that kind of thing, I love doing that much more. So yeah, it's definitely about helping the runners and helping the community.
And there's going to be instances, and I'll put that out there. I mean, there's going to be instances where the technology does fail, and it's not foolproof yet. I stand by our systems, and we're associated with ChronoTrack, so I know how well the technology works, but there are going to be problems out there that, at the end of the day, we're all human behind these things. So we always got to give that benefit of the doubt to the runner.
Yep,
no
I
doubt.
agree.
So,
I'd rather miss somebody that cheated than call somebody out who didn't. So that's always kind of my theory. So, all right. Well, Frankie, thank you again very much. Miami Marathon. Look forward to it, and I look forward to looking at the results and helping you out if I can. And
thank you, Derek.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.
Take care, Scott. Take care. Bye, guys. Bye.
Thank you again for listening to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Marathon Investigation, on Twitter, Marathon Investigator. You can look for Derek Murphy. That's the easiest way. And also Patreon. For just a few dollars a month, you can support the podcast. And if you give $10 a month, you can get access to bonus content, which we'll begin releasing towards the end of December. We've already recorded one episode kind of talking about Mike Rossi and a little bit of the obsession with Mike Rossi, and we reference him in just about every episode. Again, that was kind of the impetus to starting my site, was the whole debate discussion around Mike Rossi cheating. So we summarize what that case is all about for those of you that may not have been aware. So that was the first one we recorded, and we will be doing more as well. That's just more of kind of a free discussion, typically between Scott and myself. And so please do go to Patreon and search for Marathon Investigation and become a patron. And also 10 Junk Miles. Listen to Scott's podcast. You can find it at 10junkmiles.com or anywhere you listen to podcasts, 10 Junk Miles. Definitely support him. We appreciate all his work on the show as well. Thanks, and until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Have a questionable result to report? Visit marathoninvestigation.com to contact us, or email Derek at results@marathoninvestigation.com.
Another case closed for the Marathon's silent guardian.